You are watching an episode in our Landlording A to Z series, where we walk you through the steps, skills, and challenges involved with residential rental real estate investing. We share our expert advice, including the tips, tricks, and strategies we've learned over years of managing rental property. Please subscribe to our channel to get notified each time a new episode comes out, and please like and share our content with people you know who might be interested. Thanks for watching.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another Landlording A to Z episode from us, Landlord Gurus. I'm Chris. We've got Eli here as well. Today we are on the 8th episode about tenant screening. We're going to talk about what you do after you have continued on from your advertising, your showings, and receiving applications, which we talked about last time. We also talked about having a rental criteria checklist. So you've created that, you've advertised, and you've shown the property, and you've received an application. So what you're going to do next is, if you've sent that application through a tenant screening service, it's going to be real easy. They're going to basically automatically send you a tenant screening report. If you haven't gone through a tenant screening service to get the application, this is where you will then submit that application to one of those services or input the information directly. But that tenant screening report is going to provide you with a bunch of information that you're going to use to then help you accept or reject your applicants. So in this episode today, we're going to talk about screening reports and what you're going to see in those, what you're going to look for. We're going to talk about references, both previous landlords and employment references. We'll talk about the types of documentation that you're going to need and the types of documentation that you're going to need from your applicants. And then we'll talk about other scenarios like having cosigners or guarantors. Before we get started, I'll just remind everyone this is the time to go like and subscribe, share these videos, get notified for when the next ones come out. Because we are putting out a whole series of Landlording A to Z. We're going to have a bunch more as we continue on down this road. So yeah, Eli, you can go ahead and take it away at the first part.
Okay, yep. So I've got the tenant screening reports is the first thing we're going to cover. And those come in a couple of different forms. So when people think about a tenant screening report, usually they're thinking about a credit report, and that is a big part of it. So you'll get a FICO score usually from TransUnion or Experian, one of the credit rating houses. And depending on what type of a report you've ordered, you may get a synopsis, or you may get very detailed information on all of their credit cards, trade lines, all of this applicant's credit history, all the accounts they've had, what their payment history has been like, where they've missed payments or if not. And you also get a summary of what their overall debt profile is like. So, you'll get a overall amount of debt available to them, borrowing power, and then what their current balance is. So you can dig way deep into it, or you can get kind of high level. So, Turbo Tenant, for instance, has an income insights that they include, which kind of gives you an idea based on the data that's out there, whether or not the stated income is likely to be, what that applicant really is making.
So when you talk about receiving a FICO score,
Yeah,
that's that traditional number that is often used. Might be 500 something or 600 something or 750 or whatever, right? That's that score that the credit agencies assign to people requesting a credit. Now, I think a lot of these screening services, some of them have like their own name for this FICO score, right? Like, you'll see a resident score, and it's slightly different, but
right.
based on the same scale, more or less. Is that correct?
Yes, and I think the TransUnion generates the resident score, and probably most of the property management software and tenant screening services out there, I think more of them use TransUnion than anything else. And the resident score is their magic sauce about the indicators out there, the financial indicators to look for, that some kind of algorithm that indicate whether or not they're likely to be a reliable payer as a resident. So it's a landlord slanted assessment, basically.
Right.
And I think I may have misspoken. I think Experian actually has a Vantage score. So
Right.
it's not the same thing, but anyway, they're credit rating scores.
Right. And so if you in your criteria have chosen, a minimum credit score of, say, 620 is what I use often, or 650, or whatever score that you might be looking for, regardless of what service that you get, generally, if you're looking for that minimum score, it doesn't really matter which service is being used. Like, you'll get a number that should be a good, indicator of whether they meet your criteria or not.
Yeah, and they often give you a red, orange, green indicator too. This is a good score. So take a look at and draw some context if you have a bunch of information in front of you. If you want to be detailed, the number is not necessarily all there is to the story. I've had lots of tenants who've not had great credit scores for one reason or another, for some kind of a misfortune, medical, financial hardship, or a divorce, or things happen. So you have to balance using these tools empirically and intuitively. So, and one thing also to consider is considering a debt to income ratio. So Chris, do you use no more than 20%?
Yeah.
So then that's debt burden, right? So if you make $3,000 a month, then you don't want your applicants to have any more than $600 in debt payment.
Right.
Something along those lines.
Exactly.
And with $1,000, 3-to-1 income to rent ratio ish, so they could afford that $1,000 rental, for example, would be.
They made 3,000. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, all that stuff, is stated in the report as well, right? As far as what their monthly debt burden would be. And
exactly. So you can look at that. Yeah. Okay, Chris, you want to take the criminal background?
Yeah. So the next thing that you'll get in these tenant screening reports is a criminal background check. Although if you are in a place such as Seattle where you're not allowed to look at a tenant's criminal history, you might not get that in your report, depending on what service you use. Some of the services know that they cannot deliver a criminal background report to certain people, but if you do get one or you're able to consider one, generally what you'll get is a 50-state background data search from all the public registries and the FBI most wanted list, terrorist watch list, and the sex offenders list. So basically all of the tenant screening software that's out there, will run those reports, and they may have different ways they go about getting that information, but I think generally they're all doing kind of that search for this. So again, where it's legal to do so, you can check their criminal background, and again, look for context. So if they got something on their report, how recent was the incident? What was the severity? Was it kind of a minor lapse in judgment from long ago when they were young, or is it something worse? It's all, again, you got to kind of determine what is important, and what is disqualifying in your mind. If you can think about that ahead of time and have that as part of your rental criteria, even on the checklist, then that gives you a head start, so that when you do see something, you kind of already know that, yes, this is something that disqualifies, or maybe this is something that requires a little bit more in-depth research about. So it just makes it a little bit easier and kind of takes some of that judgment out of the equation, I suppose, or at least some of the being able to be influenced, I suppose.
So another piece in these screening reports that you'll get is reporting on identity verification, employment history, and address history. So this is important for a couple of reasons. The identification verification essentially matches up the name you've been given, the addresses you've been given, the social security number. And while you still want to verify that the person you're meeting is the person whose identity is they're using to apply by seeing an ID, for example, these reports line everything up. So yes, this person lived at this place and worked at this place, and the dots align. And then in the employment and residence history, give you information that you can use to request references from past landlords and past employers if you choose to do that. So that information will be given to you on the application, but then it's verified on these reports as well.
Yep.
And just to reiterate, though, you do want to, and a lot of the property management software and screening services out there now that are easy to find online, we read about all kinds of them, they actually automatically prompt applicants to upload a photo ID and often some kind of documentation of their income as well. So
I usually require the past couple months of pay stubs.
Right.
So that's a good place that they can upload it right there, rather than trying to collect, physical paper pay stubs, if anybody gets those anymore.
Right.
So they can upload all that there, W-2s. If you require things like bank statements or prior year taxes, anything like that, if you do require them, they can upload them there.
Right. And you may need to tell them what kind of documentation you want them to upload based on what their employment situation is. Maybe that a bank account is more relevant than a pay stub or something like that. So
exactly.
And Apply Connect, for example, they pretty much just do screening. Chris, you
I use them.
Yeah. So they focus on tenant screening reports, and they'll even provide like the past names and aliases, which can be valuable.
Yeah, definitely. It's all, again, more information I think is usually better. And so if you can see that, they may have resided somewhere using a different name, even if it's just like their maiden name or whatever, It just helps you verify and make sure that they are who they say they are.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So these reports also will deliver, any sort of evictions or judgments that might be on public record, as well as any kind of prior court judgments, if they've got any of those on public records as well. So most of these screening services will go dig all that stuff up. It's all out there. So it's just a matter of them being able to pull that information out from the public domain and getting that on their report. So, if they have had any of these evictions and missed payments, sometimes they're even showing on there. So you're going to want to take a look. Generally, if they've got any evictions at all in the past, and often these reports will show the past 7 years. I don't know if they're able to pull up anything before that, but I think if they've had an eviction in the past 7 years, I think that's sort of a disqualifier for me. And rent payments, there might be, you might have a little bit more leniency with rent payments, but again, evictions and missed rent payments are, indications of where that applicant, places the importance of their rental responsibilities in their overall decision-making process, right? If they make it a habit to pay rent before spending on, anything else, they're probably going to continue doing that. If they make it a habit of paying for other things and rent kind of taking a backseat, then that may be an indicator as well down the road. So all things to consider.
Right. And we'll link to an article that we wrote on the best online tenant screening services. So if you're looking for one, you can.
Yeah, we've evaluated quite a few of them and kind of have ranked and given our recommendations for what we like.
Differentiated them. Yeah. Yeah. So another step in screening applicants is to contact references, ask for references from past landlords for sure, and possibly past employers as well. Contacting a human who has had this kind of relationship with this applicant is important. It tells you a lot how and whether and how quickly a landlord or a property manager follows up and responds to your questions can tell you quite a bit, even if it's kind of subtle. So references can help you evaluate and kind of the character and interpersonal skills and reliability and financial fitness, and ultimately ability and willingness to pay, and to be, equally importantly, to be a good neighbor and a good steward of your property. So, some tenant screening products or property management products even will do this for you. Avail, for example, will automatically sends a list of questions to past landlords. And whether you use a product like that to do it automatically or you do it yourself, I just keep a file with all my questions that I copy and paste, add in the name here and the address there, and that type of thing, and email, and I send emails directly to past landlords. But the things you want to ask about, and we have an article on this as well, questions to ask rental references. But you're going to want to ask about payments. Did they pay rent and utilities and fees on time? Did they meet the other terms of the agreement? Did they take good care of the property? Did they cause disruption with other tenants or neighbors or with you? I think you have to be a little careful about it because it's subjective, but you can ask questions that lead towards kind of interpersonal skills, communication style, were they direct and prompt and courteous in their interactions with you and others.
Right. Even if did they give you notice when they decided to move out, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then a common one that's interesting is like, would you rent to this person again? And the standard industry response is yes, if they met the criteria at the time. So the property management industry has decided that that's the safe response to that. I've debated whether or not to keep asking it that question or not, but it is a standard one, and it can't hurt. And then if you're reaching out to employers, you could ask about the salary. I just asked about ballpark. Does this sound right? Are they full-time contract or part-time? And is this somebody who's reliable? In somebody you'd recommend.
Yeah, and a lot of times with the employer references, especially if they work at a larger company, all you're going to really, be able to talk to is someone at HR a lot of times, and all they're going to be able to tell you is whether that person, actually is an employee there or not. And so, sometimes you're not going to get what you want out of the employment references, but worth trying.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Again, like I said, we've got an article about that, about the best questions to ask rental references. So we'll put a link down there. In that article, we also talk about, how to screen tenants when traditional references are not available. So for example, if, you have problems verifying income, like if they have non-W-2 income and they don't have pay stubs, things like that, how do you do that? If they have a lack of credit or rental or employment history, if they are just graduated from college, they may not have a rental history yet. So how do you deal with that? they don't have prior landlords or they've only been living at home. So in that article, we talk about things like that, as well as some other issues that come up, such as, the applicant's consent to contact references and how to spot fake references, researching, an applicant's online presence, if you can find that out and get other information. So we'll post a link to that. Take a look.
Yeah, and we touched on this earlier, but getting documentation is important as a part of the screening process of screening an applicant. That is verifying their identity, having a government ID that you can verify that that's who the applicant is, and then getting pay stubs or bank statements or tax forms or offer letters. I've had quite a few people who are moving to the area, and so I'll get an offer letter. And it gives you some assurance that this is the person that they say they are, and they have the means that they say they do, and it's worth doing the due diligence.
Yeah, definitely. And you can upload all that through the software. And then lastly, we'll talk about how you screen cosigners or guarantors. A lot of times you're gonna have a tenant or an applicant that might not be able to qualify on their own, so they've got a parent or a cosigner or someone else who can vouch for them. So I think, in practice, the best practice is just to treat that cosigner or that guarantor as if they are an applicant themselves. They fill out the application, you get a tenant screening report on them, they pay the screening fees, check references when it's appropriate, things like that. They might not have landlord references, right, if they are, a parent and they already own their own home, but, do your due diligence on that guarantor as well.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and one note on that, there are a number of different of new products out there now. Like there's a company called the Guarantors, which we partner with, who act as the guarantor. It's insurance basically.
Yeah.
The applicant pays an insurance fee to the guarantors, so that if the applicant can't pay the rent, the guarantors do. And also, through Avail, and there are various different products that do these rent assurance or rent guarantee, and we've written whole articles on that as well. But basically, if somebody has a difficult time qualifying on their own, they can pay to buy insurance to make sure you're covered. It's kind of a cool thing. The guarantors will actually make it so that the applicant doesn't have to pay the security deposit. They pay a fee, so they're paying a portion of it, but they don't have to have the whole amount out of pocket.
Right.
So there's some interesting.
It can be a useful service for a lot of applicants out there, for sure.
Yeah.
And kind of helps ease, the landlord's peace of mind as well.
It's a good balance.
Yeah.
For all parties. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So we'll put links to all that in there as well. So take a look. I think our takeaway here about tenant screening is a lot of tenant screening software services out there, a lot of property management services out there that will do this all, automatically, do it all online. You can just send them a link and they fill it out, and it's immediate. Yeah. You don't have to collect, money for it or anything. They pay directly. So, we'd recommend using one of those services, and in conjunction with your rental criteria checklist that we talked about before, having that already thought through and already created by the time you do the screening will help you kind of determine, help you lead you towards accepting or rejecting an applicant. So we'll get into that next episode. We talk about, the acceptance and rejection and how you deal with that. But
so we have a sample rental criteria checklist you can download to help you make your own.
Exactly.
It's a guide. It's a roadmap to what you're looking for and who you'll accept.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, make sure you follow us and get notified when the next one comes out. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Bye.